You say
This
when?
is Saturday the 22nd of October 2005 at Ditchling, and we're having an interview, a second interview with Dorothy Kettle from Fordham, who we've done a session with before, and we're coming back to do a more complete picture of Dorothy's life. So thank you, Dorothy, for coming along, and I think you have a bit of a prepared talk to give to us. So what have you got to tell us?
Well, I married in 1936, January, at Fordham Church, moved in the cottage where I still live. In 1938, I joined the St John Ambulance Brigade and trained for my home nursing and first aid certificates, which I passed. In 1940, I volunteered to be a collector for the war saving certificates in the village. This I did on Friday evenings in the summer. During the winter, I did it in the afternoon. But when collected the money, I can't remember, people paid what they wanted or what they could afford, but when they had 15 shillings saved, they had a certificate, but I can't remember how much the stamps were. But at the end of it, I was presented with a certificate for the work I did. I used to get the post from the post office, the stamps, which was a general stores in Ponders Road, owned by the Player brothers. In 1940, a local committee was formed to raise money for the armed services to support the war effort. I went on the committee and helped to organise functions which were held in the village hall during the winter. In the summer, they were held on the playing field next to the shop and post office. In 1940, the Americans were stationed at the Wellingford airfield. They were very good supporters, came and joined in all the events, also supplying raffle prizes. Soldiers were also billeted in Penland Hall. They too used to come along and join in. In 1940, I also joined the ART, meeting at St Albans Hospital, usually one night a week. Meetings were held weekly. Mock air raids were held occasionally at weekends. These operated from Fordham School. In 1940, in June, I started work at the Colchester Manufacturing Clothing Company, making army uniforms. This was part-time from 8 to 1. I left home about 7:20, home by 1:30. I cycled the whole time. I stayed on until December 1945, so I could attend the party which the firm gave us as an appreciation for our work. Parties. I also helped with the various functions which were held at the end of the war to celebrate peace. Now that I'll leave that out because that's when I joined the motorcycle. In 47, I went on the fete committee and stayed on almost until it finished. My main job was in charge of the raffle, selling tickets to each house in the village, also on the day. We had coffee evenings, also a tramp supper at the old rectory. I supplied the fruit cakes. This was to finance the fete funds. Women's Institute, 1954. I was a founder member, stayed on until 1988 when I remarried, and as my husband was a keen bowler, he persuaded me to play. During the time when I saw a WI member, during the time when I was WI member, I was treasurer from 1965 until 1973. 1965, the Fordham Senior Citizens Club was formed. A gentleman in the village volunteered to be secretary when he retired in 3 months' time. At the formation meeting, I was asked if I would stand in. I agreed, but it was a very long 3 months. I had the job for over 20 years. The club folded because members were leaving to go to relatives to live or in homes. We were left with only 6 members. We carried on meeting in each other's homes, but finally we had to call it a day. I had, with 3 others from different clubs, an invitation to lunch with the Lord Lieutenant of Essex. This was held in Chelmsford, and he presented us with a certificate for our work for the community. Church work. 1958, I went on the parochial church council. I wrote an article in the monthly magazine for some time. This I gave up, but carried on with the rota of the church cleaning and flower arranging, which I also took my turn. I gave that up in 1988. In 1980, the first flower festival was held, July, in the church. I was secretary. The theme of the festival was a poem written by the Reverend Hugh Barber. We held various events to raise money to buy flowers, etc. The event was a great success, and it was agreed that we would hold another one in July 1982. In 1968, a few members from the Fete Committee decided to form a small committee to organise social evenings in the village hall, so that the people moving into the new houses were able to get to know each other. It was very successful, but after quite a long while, the landlord at the Horseshoes began to run dances in the hall, and at that time we felt our functions had served their purpose. And the club was called 2190. When it was I suggested that, and someone said, "What does it mean?" I said, "We can have members from 21 to 90. Fordham Horticultural Show. This was held on the meadow next to the village shop. I have no idea when it first started, but I can remember when I was after the war, my dad putting fruit and vegetables in the show. 1955, I went on the committee, and in 1956 stayed on until it folded. About 1969, it was revived in 1978 and was held on the present playing field. It was there we had country dancing in the marquee after the show. Fordham Post Office. About 1965, I was asked if I could do stock taking at the village shop by the owner, who was Kells Mason. After a little while, this became odd days helping in the shop. Eventually, I learnt about the post office, serving in the shop and post office 3 days a week later on. Eventually it changed hands. I left and went to the school. Sometime later, Mr. and Mrs. Evans bought the business. I used to go then at weekends and take in charge of the post office and shop so they could have a weekend away. I collected for many charities in the village, all on my bicycle. I did not learn to drive until 1970. Parish Council. 1970, I was co-opted onto the Parish Council and retired in 1983, having been Vice President for 3 years. It was a very interesting time. I got invited to some very good, interesting events. And I was also on the committee, subcommittee, with members of other clubs, etc., to commemorate the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer. I was in charge of the notice board for many years after I left the council. Fordham School. In 1971 I went to work at Fordham School, known as a dinner lady, then playground assistant. During that time I got permission from the headmistress to run a raffle at the games afternoon. This was a great success. And I also ran a raffle to raise money for tops and shorts for the football team, and also the skirts for the girls' netball team. I went on outings with a teacher in charge and helped wherever I could. I really enjoyed being there. It was a very happy time. 28th of May was the day I had to retire. I had a really lovely afternoon with gifts, letters, etc., a good send-off from the children. But for me, I was sad. I had to leave. I felt I could have gone on a lot longer. I enjoyed being there. While I was there, the headmistress, Mrs. Dodman, asked me if I could talk to the fourth-year pupils for their project for the Doomsday Book, 1935 to 85. I had 12 booklets printed. Flower Festival. 1980, the first Flower Festival was held in Fordham Church. A committee was formed. I took the secretary's job. Functions were held to buy flowers, etc. The theme was a poem written by the Reverend Hugh Barber called The Heart.
Can you excuse us a minute? We've got the phone. We're going to start again. We just got interrupted by telephone. Cold caller that we're plagued with, all of us, our lives nowadays. And I should have mentioned that, of course, that we've got Marlene Boyle with us today as well, to jog a few memories and whatever. So, sorry for the interruption, Dorothy. Please continue.
The theme was a poem written by the Reverend Hugh Barber called The Heart of Love. This was held in September. It was agreed to organise a festival every 2 years. The following one was in July 1982. I think the last one was in 1990. My other activities were babysitting, collecting for charity, knitting blankets and tops for Oxfam, no longer required, and still knitting blankets for homes for the elderly, also hats and mittens for Christmas boxes for abroad. I cycled everywhere. In September 84, I took part in the East of England church-sponsored bicycle ride with a friend. We visited 10 churches, cycling 25 miles. The next year we did it again, and our mileage had gone up to 30 miles. Of course, different churches, a different route, but I can't remember how much we raised. Now it's my cottage. I also decorated my cottage all my married life, but the last time was about 1970. I also did dressmaking for many years, but I think my main achievement was preventing the GPO from erecting a phone box on the grass adjoining my garden in 1987.
Trying to think where that is. But
There was a picture of her in the paper.
Oh yes, I've got
On the corner of Sunnyside?
on the left.
Oh yes,
On the left.
yes. And we have one across the road now, in Ponders Road.
Oh yes, yes. Yes, I fought hard for that. Now, that's all I've got in this.
Well, that's quite an extensive list, isn't it? You've covered everything there, I think.
I think I have.
All duties, very well done.
You said something about the school and the mock airways. What did that what happened there then?
Oh, would you like me to enlarge on that?
Well, yes, just a little bit, yeah.
Is it on?
Yes, we're running.
Well, it was actually we had I think it was an ambulance, probably an old one, and what we had, people came, they volunteered to be victims, and a chap with the ambulance, he would go out and drop them off at various points. And then they had to bandage them according to if they were injured, they had the necessary things in the ambulance to bandage them if they needed it.
Oh, I see.
Well, I've got to tell you this because I've always remembered it. It was getting on well in the afternoon and we thought the ambulance should have been back. Well, the person that was dropped off first on the church bank was Laurie White. Well, of course this was before he went into the forces, well, he eventually came into the school and I was at this end of the school and I said, "What are you doing back?" "Oh, well," he said, "I couldn't stay there any longer." I said, "But they'll be looking for you." He said, "Oh no, they won't. I've left a note, bled to death and gone home." I thought that was hilarious.
And they found the note, hopefully.
They found the note, yes.
So the delay was from some other reason.
Were the White family living at the school at the time? Who was living at the school at the time?
Yes.
The White family?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, very good.
And that was what it was just a practice, in case anything did happen.
And when was this?
This was during the war, in
19...
Oh no, that's...
What was the nearest, was there any bombs dropped anywhere around here you can remember? What was the nearest, well, the biggest sort of tragedy you can think of just in this area? Was there any near misses or anything like that at all during the war? With the Americans being so near? Although they didn't come to near the end.
Well, I think as far as I can remember, the nearest thing was Fordham Heath, when the Star was...
Oh.
I went through into the front bedroom and I looked out because we'd heard noises, and that was because it was a thatched roof,
Oh, right.
because it had a direct hit.
Was that still part of Fordham then?
Yes, because the boundaries were changed in
No, it's 47, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, 1950, I think, sometime
something like
So
in
that was still
1950.
Fordham then, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
when
Yes.
HS Green was created.
Yes.
Oh, right. The other thing we were going to talk about recently, you mentioned in your first interview the Sheepshanks family. Now,
Yes.
what have you got to tell us?
Well,
Developments in that direction.
the developments, I never ever thought,
That's a pigeon hitting the window.
I never ever thought I would meet him again, personally, although in about the early 50s, my husband and I was staying with an aunt at Melton, and an uncle of mine who'd been in the army all his life practically, when he came out, he was abroad a lot, when he came out, he was the recruiting officer at Newport in Wales. Well, him and his wife were staying with Auntie as well, and he suggested we went along about 2 or 3 miles from where Auntie lived at Melton to the polo match Sunday afternoon. Well, while we were there, we looked along, and some little way on the left were 3 men standing. And I don't know, in conversation, Auntie Gert happened to raise her hand, and one of the men did the same. I didn't take any notice, but then at the later, little while do they call them chuckers when they go?
Yeah.
Yes.
Chuckers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
chuckers,
I
yeah.
think so. You go on the pitch and tread the turf back
Oh.
again,
Yes.
if you want.
Mm.
She turned to me and she said, I think you might know one of those men along there, Dory. So I said, the one I put my hand up to. So I said, why? Well, she said, I seem to remember you worked for a Sheepshanks in London. And I said, yes, that's right. She said, well, that is him.
Mm.
But I didn't, she said, why don't you go along? But I didn't really want to. But Uncle Alec, he said, well, I'll go along. And I remember Auntie Gert saying, she said, no, you mustn't go, Alec. If Dorothy doesn't want to go, that's her decision.
Mm.
But when I told him, well, I have met him personally since, only recently, about a week ago. And it was through my last video
Yes, interview,
Yeah,
yes.
with Mr. Jeffcott. And I was talking about my life. And I mentioned that I looked after a child by the name of Robin Sheepshanks in London and took him to Cornwall because he was having chest problems, just for his health. Well, through David Sheepshanks, Robin's father, Jess, I think I've got this right, contacted David, and he contacted his father, and he was delighted, and he contacted me, and I've had an interview with him. We were talking about when he was a child, because I used to look after him. I wasn't in sole charge because there was a governess. I only looked after him when she had time off, which was mostly weekly. And we had quite a lot to talk about. But the most important, towards the end, I suppose my brain was getting a bit stale, he asked me if I ever had tea in the nursery. And I said no. Well, I said it was a completely barefaced lie, you might call it, because after I'd looked up, we'd been out on a Wednesday afternoon, if it was fine, or played in if it was wet, I used to have tea with him. It was brought up to the nursery, and afterwards I used to play with him, with his toys, read to him, and I think, I'm almost sure, he had to be in bed by 7 o'clock. And that was when my duties finished for the day.
You said he was about 6 years old, wasn't he? Did you say?
Pardon?
Was he about 6, wasn't he, at this
About
time?
5 or
About
6, yes.
Yeah.
And, however, I've had a conversation on the phone since then, because after I got to bed at night, I was recapping, and I thought, well, when I said no, I didn't have tea with him, it was a deliberate lie. So I said I had to do something about it, so I phoned him. And he phoned me back, and he was so pleased to think. I not only remembered that, I remembered how I used to take him to see his grandma. We used to go by taxi. Couldn't remember the name, but Green Park was in my mind. Well, it turned out to be, she lived in Eaton Square. And we used to go, we went 2 or 3 times and had tea with her in the drawing room. But one day we went, and she'd got an unexpected visitor. So we had tea with Lady Margaret in her room, and then we were taken up to the drawing room to see his grandma before we left. I told him that. And then I told him about the little white dog. Do you remember? He said, yes. Judy. I said, that's right. I said, very often I used to have to go down to the shop to get something for the cook, fruit, vegetable, something. And I always took the dog with me. Well, it was allowed to run about the house. But if it was wet, I used to wipe its paws. Well, according to the time of the day, I probably hadn't made the beds. Well, I'd go up to the bedroom and make the beds. And the dog used to be hiding under the beds and jump out and nip my ankles. So that was the gratitude for me taking it for a walk. But I can remember it was a Sealam.
Mm.
But I was so thrilled to see him because I never ever thought that it would happen.
Mm.
Mm. How did you get the job?
Well, thank you, Jess, anyway, for contacting him.
No, it's my pleasure.
Well,
It was a loose end that should have been sorted out.
How did a 16-year-old from here get a job in London? How did you get it advertised?
I think I said on my film, on the first one, that the school governors, Latest Green, said that it was a pity that I couldn't take up school teacher, being a school teacher.
Oh, I see.
I got the makings for one, because when I was my last class 6, I was hardly in it. I used to do my work so quick, and I used to go into the infant room and help the infant teacher do the the late one, the ones who come to school last.
Yeah.
Well, the only other thing was service.
Mm.
So of course I'd wait. I don't know how I got to know or what proceeds happened, but I know I got this job at Copford Rectory the 24th of January 1927. And the day there was a cook and a parlour maid, and I was in between maid. I'd got to help the cook and help the parlour maid. I hadn't been there. Oh, the chauffeur had taken Dr. Rosedale, Doctor of Divinity, of course, to London, to this station at Moxday to go to London, something to do with the church. And he was supposed to meet him from the 4 o'clock train. Well, he went and he wasn't on there. Later on, the phone went. Well, I don't think I'd ever seen a phone, leave alone hear a phone ring. And my cousin said, you go, I don't answer it. And Mrs. Rosedale was stone deaf, so she couldn't. So I went and I just said hello, and this man's voice said, could I speak to the lady of the house? And I said, I'm sorry, she doesn't answer the phone. Well, I better come and see her. That was all the conversation was. But of course, when he turned up, the chauffeur went to the station again, and when he came back, there's police, it was the police, you see, he was already there. So he went in with Mrs. Rosedale, and they did the talking, and he had a heart attack on the underground from Liverpool Street to Aldgate. Well, that's how, well, of course, it was the rectory they lived in, obviously, and Mrs. Rosedale, she chose to go back to London.
Oh, I see.
In Sumner Place, South Kensington. Well, I went with her, and my cousin, who was cook, but the parlour maid didn't come. Well, they didn't want a parlour maid because it's only her to look after. But anyway, eventually, I think about a year afterwards, my cousin got married. We had someone from outside Birmingham. She was very nice, but it didn't seem to be the same. I felt I wanted to move on.
Mm.
So I applied for this. It was a temporary job for a year, and I got it. That was how.
Okay.
All right. So there's a conclusion to an interesting
Yeah.
story from 80 odd years ago.
Yes.
Meeting up with Robin again and
Oh yes. But
sharing those memories.
Yes. But I really. He was such a lovely child, you know. He was.
Is he a widower now?
Pardon?
Is he a widower?
No.
He's still got a wife, has
His
he?
wife. And he had 4 sons.
Oh.
Well, the other subtopic we were going to talk about, you mentioned it, is motorcycling. You became a motorcyclist at some point in your life. Now, what were the circumstances that brought that about?
Well, that was in 1946. I suppose it was a relief from the war. I don't know. We joined the culture, my husband and I joined the Castle Motorcycling Club in 1946, which met on Friday evenings, not competing but helping and supporting at all the events, also attending and supporting other clubs' events such as scrambles, grass track, racing, hill climbs, trials, treasure hunts. Well now, this is a few notes I've written to carry on with this. The club, we met at the Colchester Angling Club at the bottom of St Bottle Street. But after a while, the club moved to the Albert on the bypass. We knew it was the angling club, at least I did, because there were all pictures of fish on the wall.
Not very relevant.
Yes. The club held scrambles, which were held in Friday Woods, usually at holiday weekends. No meeting on the Friday prior to the event. Members turned up on the course to prepare putting up safety barriers, etc. But of course we weren't involved in that, but we used to go and have a chat and walk. One thing I can always remember, that was quite early on in my days in the club. We were walking around Friday Woods and the treasurer's wife was with us and she was expecting, and we had a lovely girl. She came from Somerset. She'd married a Colchester chap, and someone asked Margaret when she was really expecting her baby, and she said August. Well, this Eileen was so laid back, if that's the right word. I don't actually know what it means, but it's used a lot. And she said,
relaxed.
She said, what, this August? Margaret said, I hope so. I've never forgotten that.
Which August did you have in mind? So did you scramble yourself, or was it...
No, I didn't take part in anything physically, only when I was supposed to be selling programmes or giving out leaflets. There was one chap, he'd got a small motorbike and he'd had a pillion fixed. He wasn't very big, he was a trainee carpenter. And we were down at Lexington Springs on the meadow there, the grass track. And there was a policeman, you know the Laughing Policeman, the song many years ago? He looked a bit like him in my imagination. He was such a jolly chap. Well, this particular time, this young chap came in with this motorbike and he kept talking about having one. So I said, I don't think you'll ever have one, Derek. He said, yes, I will, Dot. He came with it, so he said, you come, I'll take you for a ride. He said, come on, he said, before I go in. So I said to the policeman, take these programmes, Well, he did take them, and off I went. And we had a ride round the village, and then we got back. And of course, what should happen while I'd gone, Charlie came, he wanted me for something. He came and he said, "Where is she?" So Josie Clam said she'd gone off with some young man on the back of a motorbike. But he was a nice chap, and he went, I was pleased, he'd worked hard and he was able to get a bigger machine, and he did well. He used to take part eventually. And as I say, any other club could enter, it was open to anyone. No, I think my husband, he was the mainstay of he was like the backup team. He was big and strong, and he was one that was raced around a track, bikes broken down, you know, helping them back to the pits or whatever they called it.
What machine did he have?
He had, well, before the war, he had a 350 matchless. He got that when I met him in 30. Well, of course, during the war he didn't use it because he bought a small one to save petrol, 250 BSA. Then he went to a smaller one than that. I can't tell, it was about a 197, something like that. He'd gone off to work one morning, and about half an hour later, I was in bed and I saw him walking past, and I thought, whatever's happened? Well, I let him down at 8 Ash Green, and he'd thrown it in the hedge and walked home and got his bicycle.
It's not still there, is it? Go back and get it, if worth something.
No, I think he got Levin to come at 8 Ash Green to come and get it. I can't remember the one he had after that, but that was a small... No, he started to use the 250 BSA. That was the one he was riding at the end of the war. But during the war, he bought an aerial. He only gave £5 for it, and I looked at it and I said, "You just wasted your money." He said, "Do you think so?" I said, "Wow, what a wreck." But he worked hard on that, and he got that up to scratch, and it looked absolutely superb. And I remember going to Cambridge to have it licensed. He eventually sold that, and then in 47 he bought a 350 Royal Enfield. That's the one he thought he wanted. Well, he bought it and rode it for some time. And one night when my brother came down, who lived in the village, he was talking about, he thought he'd get a motorbike, he'd only got a bicycle. And at that time he was cycling to Lear, I think, when they were doing the waterworks. So I was going out of the room, I was going to a double wide, so I turned around and said to my brother, "We'll sell you ours." And I didn't say any more, but when I got home, my husband said, "Why did you say?" When I said, "You've been talking about it, you don't like it, you'd like another one." So he had that, and we had a 500cc Norton with the suspension, what do you call it? The
swinging arm or telescopic forks.
No more than I do.
An ES2 probably.
But he did, yes. Well, then unfortunately, 1957, I had to have my veins done on my legs, and I couldn't ride again. I couldn't, you know, on the pillion. So we had to have a car, but he did keep the motorbike. He used to use it for work, but he was really spoiling it because he didn't, he was only going to Colchester. But in 1960, yes, someone from Luckings from St Bottle Street in Colchester, delivered a cupboard, and the motorbike stood out in the garden, and he said, passed a remark about the nice bike and that. He said, I said, do you want to buy it? And he said, is it for sale? So I said, well, I think my husband would sell it. Well, he was working down Ford Street on a big machine, digging out for the sewer. And of course, you can just imagine this young chap went up and asked him, and he said, who told you? Well, he said, I imagine it was your wife. He said, well, I'll come back and see you tomorrow. So when he came home, that was the first thing after hello. He said, who told you that I was going to sell the bike? I said, well, you've said it so many times. I thought that was almost sold. But he had it. They did a deal.
And that was the end of it, yes.
And that was it. But that was about 1962.
But nowadays you wouldn't do scrambling in Friday Woods or at Lexington.
No.
Because the Clampins still do it, don't they? Derek still goes.
He goes as a
trials, isn't it?
He goes to the meetings.
Yeah.
Ray doesn't ride. Ray's son ride because I ran Josie yesterday.
Yeah, trophies he's got. It's unbelievable, David.
Pardon?
David's trophies are unbelievable. He's got so many.
Oh yes.
David Clampin.
Yeah,
There's such a fuss about noise and I don't know things nowadays. It's very difficult,
I
isn't it?
think the more noise they make, the faster they go. That doesn't help, does it?
That's true. That's true.
Well, we digest from scrambles in Friday Woods, didn't we? Well, then there were treasure hunts, which, of course, they were operated from the Ipswich Road at the Blue Barn Garage. And, of course, I think it was a Friday night, these were held in the summer, of course. They wanted someone to go, I think there was about 3 of them, went on the motorbikes. And I don't think Charlie was there that night, I think he was working late, but I went along. And I went with one chap, and what we had to do was pick out signs, you know, and note them down. And they'd got to come on the next day, or the Sunday, no, we'd do it Friday night, on the Sunday, and see how many they could get. Well now, I can't remember when I see anyone who's elderly and would know, but I remember when we were filled up at the garage with petrol, there used to be a pennyworth of something squirted into the tank.
I did, didn't I?
Red X oil.
Yeah,
Yes.
Pardon?
Red X.
Red X.
That's what it was,
That's
yeah, remember
Yes.
that.
Well, I'll tell you where the last sign of those, thank you, I shall remember that. Round, do you know where the Fordhams used to live?
And they're still, David Fordham,
That was always,
round his farm.
yes, that
They're
was
still
always
there.
an untidy
They're
farm,
still there,
was
they're
it?
still untidy.
Yes. Well, there was a sign on that. They'd got a little sign on their building of Red X.
Oh, right, yeah.
And nobody found it. And they all said that that was just my imagination. And it was one club night. They said, I won't believe it unless you take me. And this, what was his name? Brian Neverd from Bentley. He said, I won't believe it unless you come and show me. And it was true. I don't know whether it's there now.
I don't know if it's not.
No,
But
I
it was
pinched a
then.
long time ago, didn't
They
it?
used to have
That's
good
some
hunts
years
in the
ago.
village with the car, that was good.
But that was very popular. But the only thing, you see, I couldn't go.
No, you couldn't take part.
No.
No, I
You knew all the answers.
Yes.
That's the trouble.
They were good, they were treasure hunts. We had quite a few in the village with cars. Yeah.
Then we used to go to hill climbs at Poleston and Leyston.
You don't see that again anymore, do you?
No,
No,
They do it in Yorkshire, I think, in the Dales and that.
probably, yes.
a bit slippery hills there, aren't they?
Grass tracks. I think was...
You've got some old photographs from that period, have you? Or
No, I don't know what's happened to them.
mm,
Whether I've given them to one of my nephews, I don't know.
they'd be interested
The
in.
Clampins might have.
Mm. Well, the club's still going, very strong.
Oh yes, it is.
Yes.
Derek probably might have some photos.
No, I think it was round the Ongar area. They used to have a... There was a grass track. I've got...
Was the scrum in that little lovely hall like there is now? Going back that far?
Oh yes,
Been
yes,
there for a long
we used
time,
to go.
hasn't it?
That was the Helsing Club used
Yeah.
to run that. Yes, that was a good venue. Anyway, the grass tracks, we used to go there, but unfortunately one of our club members, and I can't think, I thought it was Tony Sutton, but Josie said it wasn't him, because he's still alive, but he was killed.
Yes, one boy just recently got killed, didn't they?
Yes, as is.
In Fordham, but he's...
Oh, but the best one that well, I don't say I like this, but because it was held in the winter time, it was cold and damp. In Chalkney Woods, there used to be the trials, and they used to put, usually there was enough to have, I don't know, I don't think there was as many as females, there were males, but I didn't used to go with Charlie. He didn't have them. He used to wander round, so if someone had got stuck and whoever was there couldn't help him, he would. Yes, he was the odd job man. That was good. I know they used to have 1 point if they put their foot down. They lost 2 points for 2 feet, 3 if they nearly fell off, and 5 if they really fell off.
Yeah.
Came a cropper.
Yeah.
But that was very muddy. Well, then in 50, 3 couples, we went to the Isle of Man, and that was Josie Derek Clampin and Jean, Jerry Wheeler and Anne, and Charlie and myself. And Jeff Duke, for me, he was super that year. Of course, I say any members of any clubs, we used to go as far as Littleport to scrambles. And another one, there used to be a Brian Stonebridge. He came from the other side of Cambridge. You go past the American cemetery. It's only a little village, but I can't remember it. He was tall and really a lovely rider. You can guarantee if you knew that Stonebridge was going to be at any of these events, there'd be a crowd. He was a real sporty chap. So was Jerry Wheeler in our club at the time. He always had 2 bikes, 250 and a 350, and if some other chap had got a 250 or even a 350 and had broken down and Jerry wasn't going to ride anymore, he would lend them his bike. He was a real sport. But then his father was in the position he could, support him financially.
Nice way to be.
But that was, I quite enjoyed that. And we met.
So you didn't actually ride yourself?
I
ever?
didn't ride, only as I say, down on the grass track at Spring Lane.
Well, we've got a bike you can ride if you like, if you'd fancy it. We've got a lovely little 250.
Oh, I say, well, the 250 BSA my husband had, the day Japanese war finished, he said to me, now, if you can ride this bike, he said sensibly, he said, I'll keep it and I'll use the aerial. That was the one he'd done. Well, I went out, I took him up as far as the airfield, and when we got nearly home he said, slow up now. I said, no, we're going further. And of course I opened up and I went down the middle road. Well, and back again, and I can hear him saying it now. Well, I said, how did I do? He said, well, I've come to the conclusion, if I let you have the bike, I should be a widower.
Mm.
No,
So that was the end of your...
that was the end, yes. But no, I didn't really.
Mm. Oh, well.
You should
I did
try.
have one or two goes, as I said, this grass track.
Well, I'm sure the Colchester Motorcycle Club would be interested in your tales. And perhaps I will have to contact them. Well, thank you. I think that's
Yes,
it's given an excellent addition to your original talk, and
well, it may seem idle chatter to some people.
No, but it's prized, isn't it?
well, that's a history of your
Yes.
life, and especially relevant to Fordham. So thank you very much.